Hello everyone, this is a one controller port quick play of Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. I'd imagine it's probably very likely you've heard of this game. It would be, at least I feel like it's very hard to go without hearing of it. It's basically the spiritual successor to the Castlevania games that were developed by Koji Igarashi, or rather he had played a big role in. So, you know, Symphony of the Night, the GBA games like Area of Sorrow, and the DS games with like Order of Ecclesia, things like that. The last Castlevania game he developed was released, I think in 2008 was when Order of Ecclesia was released. And this game, even though, you know, it's been about 10 years, feels like it pretty much picks up right where that game left off. You know, he left Konami a while ago, so this is unrelated to the Castlevania brand outside of just, you know, being very much one of those games. So if you've seen any of those games before, it's pretty much like an action platformer with like RPG style elements to it. Basically, the platforming parts of the game are more exploration focused, so there's no pits in the game you really can like jump into and just die. It's always just like trying to get somewhere or trying to navigate around. One thing that is it's kind of hard to put into words, but I do feel like Castlevania games in particular have more of a active role of platforming during combat a lot of times. So I feel like there's a lot more focus on like where you're at in relation to the enemy. So there's a lot of like enemies that are above you or below you or flying around. So you gotta kind of be a bit more like, basically you spend a lot more time jumping around and hitting enemies or trying to approach an enemy while hitting them and then kind of like backing away, which I know it sounds kind of like a fairly generic for a action platformer, but I do think Castlevania has its own like particular brand of it, and this game for sure has that. One thing that they do with this game though is that there are these like souls that you can have. So if you're familiar with the later Castlevania games, between like Area of Sorrow on the Game Boy Advance and the Dawn of Sorrow on the GBA, you essentially have like different slots for souls. So that sword that's flying around that's hitting enemies is one of them. So I can change that to be like a Silver Knight, and then there's other skills here. So like this one, I killed an enemy who has like a flail. So when I use his soul, I basically use like a flail, and in the top left corner you see I have like a blue MP bar, and that MP bar basically gets drained by that soul. What's new to this game is there's these directional souls. So when I use the right analog stick here, I can kind of like spin around and aim this one. So in this case, I can shoot a bunch of arrows at this guy, and you know, if he was above me, I can still shoot arrows. And then, so in that case, I already have his soul, but I absorbed his soul. So if I didn't have his soul before, I would have his new one essentially. And then there's also more like status souls. So this one, the passive one, is basically like increased to certain types of weapons, increased specific stats. Or you can have like, in this case, like I hold down R and it burns my MP, but my strength goes up kind of thing. So I do more damage to my melee attacks, things like that. And then as you would expect from this series, there is the weapon variety. So right now I'm using like a flame whip, but you know, there's if you've played any other Castlevania game, this animation is going to look real familiar as you use the Great Sword to kind of like swipe overhead to hit enemies. And then, you know, in true Castlevania fashion as well, the weapons, even though they're the same type of weapon, can have different stats. So in this one, like I can hold it. Oh, geez, I've never seen that happen before. I can basically hold it, and then like I can charge it up before I swipe and throw it down, rather than just doing the full swing immediately. But like I think this weapon is a good example of like sometimes those skills, even though they are unique, they're not particularly worth it. So like I did 49 damage there, but if I like charge this one, if I can do it. Ah, come back to me. Let me try this again. So like 74. So like it probably would be faster to like damage wise just to spam it than to sit there and like charge it up and hit it, because it's not like doubling my damage and the time it takes to get that extra charge in. So a lot of the weapons, like I usually think for the most part, whatever has the highest attack value is typically going to be better, but there's always exceptions. There are some weapons that have particular use for skills, and then sometimes the skills on them aren't unique to their specific weapon type. So in this case, like I have this katana, and this katana particularly has like a multi-hit combo I can do there. Let me see if I can actually do that properly. Yeah, so. But then this one, the Urachi, it's the same weapon, but instead of a multi-hit combo, it's like a counter attack if I can get it to trigger. Yeah, so you do like a block there. One thing they expanded on this game particularly are the guns. I didn't really use them a lot, but basically what they do is now there's like an ammo count, so if they have 15 out of 64. And so you want to use the bullets for specific effects and like damage amounts. But I just didn't spend a lot of time with it, and because there's like a limited number of ammo, I think there's only very specific times that you'll want to use it rather than just like, you know, general navigation or something like that. If you do run out of ammo, you can use these infinite rounds, which are fine. They don't do a lot of damage though. Like, so, you know, my damage dropped by about 50 damage there. So it's not a amazing weapon, I feel like, in this game still, but I'm sure there's probably ways to use it properly. Alright, so let's see where I'm at. Let me get my bearings here real quick. Okay, I was going to go ahead this way. So yeah, it's pretty typical Castlevania stuff, I feel like, for the most part. There's chairs, you can sit in chairs, as usual. And then you just kind of go through and you collect this stuff and you gather it, and as you go through the game, you get a wide variety of things. You fight a wide variety of enemies, and the souls in particular, I always feel like, you know, since they added those with the Area of Sorrow, I feel like those have really been the star of the show because they can do a lot more variety with them. You know, it's not particularly the same thing every time. So let me see if I have a neat one I can use. I think I like this one. We'll try to use it over here. We're gonna do this little jump here. All right. A little voice acting there. Yeah. And then so in this case, I have like this little grinder that comes out, so I can just kind of like smack enemies with it. And because it stays out, I can just kind of continue to drill into enemies. If they're big enough, you know, I can kind of leave it in them. I think there might be one over here I can do that too. Yeah. Oh, the guy that actually has this weapon. So you just can kind of like shove it in and keep it in them. I feel like the souls in this game in particular are typically more powerful than the weapons, which makes sense given that they're reliant on MP. But the MP cost is pretty high for the most part, at least early on. So it may not necessarily be something you can rely on most of the time. That's kind of was one of my concerns with the directional attacks in particular, because Castlevania 4 for the Super Nintendo has the ability to kind of like whip in 4 directions. Really what I was doing there was just showing you that there's like some basic puzzle solving. I forgot to mention that while I was doing it, but you can kind of like grab this thing and then pull it around and move it as a platform so you can get over here and get this treasure chest kind of thing. But, you know, Castlevania 4 has, like, the ability to basically whip in 8 directions versus, like, this, where you have to basically just swipe in front of you or use whatever limitation the weapon you have is. So, in introducing this 360 directional stuff, they kind of reintroduced the ability to, you know, for example, if the enemy was above me right here, you know, if I wanted to attack them, I'd have to jump and hit them to do that versus just doing this and they're just dead. And it kind of, in Castlevania 4 in particular, we're going to backtrack a little bit here. But Castlevania 4, Castlevania 4, not 64. Castlevania 4 in particular, because it's just like your regular attack, I think it trivializes a lot of the game. In this case, it costs a lot of MP to do these skills usually. So for the most part, I think it's well balanced and you don't have to worry about it too much. But you'll definitely want to use your shards and skills and stuff. If you've played Order of Ecclesia, the last Castlevania game developed by Igarashi, this area here is kind of what they introduced in that game. There's always like a set of townsfolk, kind of, not really townsfolk, like shopkeepers and stuff like that in Castlevania games. I think maybe there's one exception. I don't remember which one it is. So, you know, there's a place here where you can turn in quests. So you basically, these quests are just like, hey, you know, kill 5 of these things. It's always just like, hey, kill a certain number of these things and we'll give you a material for this. So in this case, I actually get a new hairstyle from that, which I'll show you the hairstyle customization stuff at some point. There's also crafting. So we've been collecting materials, and so you can basically go through and craft different weapons, potions, all that good stuff. There's also food creation. You can also craft souls as well, actually. I forgot about that much. There's actually there's food as well. So you can craft food, and what's interesting about the food this time around is that there's like a first time bonus. So in the bottom left hand corner you can see that it says my max HP will go up by 10. So the first time I eat this rice cake or rice ball, I will get a 10 HP bonus. After that it's just like a normal healing item, but it encourages you to kind of like create a diverse set of food. You can also enhance the shards, so you know, if I wanted to, I think this one's like increase the number of projectiles casted at once with the true arrows, so I could upgrade that and then shoot more arrows at once.
So Johannes, you and Dominique are old acquaintances.
I'll go and have some of this voice acting here, really, but I feel like the main voice cast is okay. Like Miriam and Johannes particularly, I think they're solid. They feel like pretty standard voice actors. There are, so like David Hayter from Metal Gear Solid, you know, Solid Snake fame, ended up in this game. He doesn't really feel like he fits in this game. He more or less just does his Snake voice, and I don't know, like there's a particular like style of Castlevania voice acting. Like I'll show you up here. I think these characters, like the more like homely NPC characters, fit more with what I think of Castlevania voice acting.
I finished the harvest. Here's your share.
It's like this very overacted play-like style. So in this case, this guy like makes like plant seeds and stuff, and I can get like rice, corn, and stuff like that, potatoes, and I can make food out of it. But I feel like these characters up here with their voice acting, you know, it's probably not as good technically. Like in terms of how it's actually being delivered, it's probably not as good. This lady, essentially, you just trade items in, and you can kind of like trade up. She asks for a specific item, you can trade up to another one. But yeah, the main cast just feels kind of normal, which maybe that's what people would have preferred. I know, like, I'm a big fan of Final Fantasy XIV 1.0's voice acting, which is very much that playstyle, and most people consider it to be bad voice acting. So if you do get lost, there's this NPC here that will basically give you some hints. So it's like, hey, here's this part in the game that I don't know how to approach because, like, it's a narrow passage, but my character can't fit through because I'm standing up and can't crawl because I'm a video game character. And so they'll basically give you some information about trying to find a soul that will help you get past that part of the game. So that's helpful, especially since I feel like with Castlevania games, you kind of explore the castle, and sometimes you can get stuck kind of re-hunting down parts of the game where you couldn't get through, and there's a lot of dead ends, so you kind of end up revisiting dead ends, like, oh yeah, there's this problem here with this dead end kind of thing, and so I can't actually approach this. So sometimes you'll end up going to the same place like 7 times, because it's like, why can't I get past here again? And then you get there and like, oh yeah. So it's nice, like, they tell you, like, hey, there's an enemy in this area that you should go hunt. Water traversal in particular, they aren't so good about that. I feel like I wasn't given a hint for that at all. And the way you get the water traversal skill is very much just kind of killing a random enemy and getting the skill. It's strange that it feels like that part of the game, most traversal moves are given to you through like a moment in the game. In the case with the water traversal stuff, you just have to like go kill a fish or something, and eventually you'd be like, oh, now I can traverse in the water. So it's like a weird mismatch, because usually the enemy souls aren't like necessary for progressing or like that. So this is basically just a store. Basically it's a limited supply of stuff, but you can buy it with just money rather than having to go through the crafting process if you want to. Usually the stuff here isn't as good, and it's whatever. There's also this little girl named Anne.
I still owe you my life.
She does nothing. I do like Anne a lot, but they don't really do anything with her. And then this lady basically asks you to bring her food. So she needs some yellow kernels, so some corn chowder, I think is what she needs. They show you the picture, and then you're supposed to like bring her the food based off the picture kind of thing. So you kind of come back here and you do like little quests and stuff. There's not a ton to do, but you know, in the course of the game, it took me like about 13 hours to get through the game. You'll get through most of this stuff if you just like casually do it. I didn't ever really go out of my way to try to... There's some technical issues with this game, by the way. As you saw, it just froze there for a second. But I didn't really go out of my way to kill those enemies and finish those quests. So I think if you just kind of play the game casually, you'll eventually get there. I'm gonna switch over to a different save file real quick. basically to show you a bit a different of an area, something that was Castlevania kind of had some trouble with towards the end, but they kind of fixed this with Portrait of Ruin in Order of Ecclesia. There were some problems with environment variety. A lot of the environments were kind of reused between the environments, and because you had the castle setting, there wasn't a lot you could really do. There was like different settings within the castle, so like science labs and things like that, underwater caverns and things. But very rarely did they ever really go outside of what, like they would stretch where like having an underwater cavern under a castle maybe doesn't make a lot of sense, but it was there as like a bit of variety, but they didn't ever go like too crazy with the areas under the castle and things like that. So in this case, I think they just said whatever, and so there's just this weird desert area under the castle, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense why there's this desert area, but you know, it's its own unique thing. So basically I have this, like in this case I just have like this gray sword that's kind of got a, oh dang it, stop it. Stop it! I have like an upward slice skill, so it's kind of neat because this skill actually, I'll show you that in a second. It's kind of neat because the skill actually goes like really fast as you run through the environment. One thing that I think is a problem with this game, possibly, I don't know if it's a problem because you really could, it's not a guarantee that you'll end up with this skill, and there's a good chance that if it really bothered you, could just basically not use it. But you know, as I'm doing this like great sword swipe, you can see it's kind of like a slow attack pattern here. You know, it takes time. You know, all the weapons are different. This is a slower weapon, but you know, typically a weapon takes a little time to swing. You know, at best you might get like half the speed here or something like that. And I'm doing about like, you know, 62 damage there. But there's also this soul in the game that you get where you turn into this bunny girl, and this bunny girl specializes in kicks. This bunny girl does a lot of damage. So at some point, you kind of, at least in my case, I kind of started relying on this bunny girl. She, for the majority of the game, like this is probably about, you know, what's my map completion here? You know, I'm at like 70%, and I got this bunny girl pretty early on, and she's consistently been the highest damage dealing thing I have. And you know, it wouldn't be too weird, like for the most part, you know, you're doing more damage this way, and so it makes a lot of sense that you would use this character more. It does drain MP in the top left corner, but it's so slow it doesn't really matter. You can kind of like transform out of it, transform into it, do your kicks, and then transform back out of it when you're done. I'm gonna die apparently. But what's really, so like the one downside to her, she doesn't really have an upward attack, so this is why I keep the greatsword skills on, because it gives me opportunity to attack somebody above me without having to, you know, burn MP using one of the directional skills. Go away. But yeah, as you can see, it just takes some time to kill things with that. But it really, let me see, I think this might be where I want to go. It really, what really makes this bunny girl incredibly powerful, though, is that she can also jump kick. So like your standard jump kick, we'll just drop down here. Your standard jump kick does, you know, a little bit of damage. Let me see if I can hit something with like a standard jump kick here real quick. These are like crafting chests, so they actually respawn, so you can constantly revisit those every time. I think this is one up here too, yeah. So let's get down here. And so like, if I just kick this guy with my jump kick, let me wait for him to finish breathing fire real quick. Also, this dude is getting in my way, so let me get him out here. This Brule is pretty cool because you can kind of like bounce off him actually. So like, I can use him to like kick him around and hit enemies with him and stuff. And you can kind of use him for extra platforming. One thing that they actually did in this game that's kind of interesting is that like some of the stage design is built around some of the skills allowing you to get additional height. So in the case of like a jump kick, you can kick and then you can jump again when you do that, and when you hit the candles. So like there will be like paths of candles where you can jump kick up them and things like that. So let me get rid of this guy real quick. Let's look for a different familiar. Let me see, this actually might be, yeah, this would be a good enemy to show. So like if I try to jump kick this guy with my normal character, yeah, I do 1 damage. But if I switch over to this lady, 136, and not only is it 136, it's basically 136 however fast I can jump on their head. So I'm gonna like I just did like 500 something damage in the course of less than a second, you know? And it is so powerful. And so a lot of the weapon variety in the game, you know, kind of just gets undermined by this kick. That being said, as much as I say that is kind of like a downside, I think I probably wouldn't have enjoyed this game as much if it wasn't for this kick. I'm actually going to go up here real quick, because the kick, the playstyle of the kick is very different from your typical Castlevania, where it's like, you know, usually when you're trying to hit enemies in Castlevania, we're going to kill these guys in like one hit probably. But, you know, you kind of have to like approach them and jump and hit them kind of thing. And just kind of, you know, go in, hit them, and then back out when they're about to attack and leave. But in the case of the jump kick, usually strategy is more of get above them and then just like smash on their head as much as possible. So it kind of makes you rethink your movement quite a bit in a way that I actually like a lot. So one thing I'm going to show you here real quick is you can also customize your character. So you can basically change the hairstyle. So we're going to make, I think her name's 4 from Drakengard, because we can. So let's do that. I don't know why, other than I was trying to do this earlier and I accidentally made somebody that looks like 4, and I was like, yeah, sure. Why not make it look like 4? You can also change your skin color, so it could also be like a Ori Chambara zombie or something. Make your eyes red. The one problem with this, and you can already tell, is that, you know, I've customized my character, and then I have this hat and these glasses. This hat, I can't change the color of it. It's just forever blue. But there's stats on it, and it has high intelligence, which my bunny kick is based off intelligence. So it's actually important that I have this hat on, but I can't hide it. I can't do anything. I'm just kind of stuck with it. So if I want to be like, you know, as presentable as possible, I just have to kind of take the stat hit and switch over to some random other equipment pieces. So in this case, usually the rings are safe ones because they just basically either they don't display on the character at all or they display on the fingers. I'm not quite sure. And then so, you know, all these have skills or stats associated with them though. So if you want to be, you know, like not weird hat lady that doesn't have a hat that matches her clothes, then you kind of have to just, you know, be willing to get rid of something or find some substitutes. So usually if I wanted to like switch out my character's looks, I would like switch to a like a luck build, because lucks increase your drop rate and stuff. So I wasn't like, you know, completely missing out on stuff. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. The kicks in this game make for an interesting way to navigate it, because like you can kind of just, there's that freeze again. You can kind of just like go through and just like smack everybody in the head while you're passing by. Admittedly, this is like a low level area, so it's going to be pretty easy. But you can kind of just get through areas really quick, because even if there is an enemy with like a lot of health, you can kind of just like get on top of them and just like smash into them, and they're just dead. It's very rare that there's a problem with an enemy dying. So like there, she's dead and gone. There's also something that I don't know if it's a bug or not, but need 2 hits for that guy. There's a problem where like, or not really a problem, but like when you do like a side dash, if you don't do anything, or let me try that again. I'm doing a bad job. I keep doing it. Like there's like some landing lag when you jump down. You like get stuck on the ground there for a second. But if you like duck when you do that, let me see if I can get it to happen. Whoops. Or I don't know if it's like based off the height or what, but like sometimes you can hit the ground and not stop. So you can kind of just like keep on kicking through the environment, and you go pretty fast. So you combine this with your powerful kicks, and you more or less just kind of get through the area really fast. You know, it's interesting. Like I think if you are kind of tired of how Castlevania played before, I think this is, or not tired, but you want something different. The kicks are definitely like the star of the show here. So these kicks can also be really, really deadly to bosses in particular. So let's go do a boss fight here real quick. The bosses, usually you can kind of like get on top of them and do basically the same thing to the skeleton dragon I showed earlier. So let me go ahead. The load times are a little long in this game. Technical issues with this game are still around. I think this is patch like 1.03 or something like that. PSA, if you play this game, make sure you update it all the way, because there's some like treasure chest bug that if you update the game, if you play the game on like the original version, then update it, it actually like doesn't break your save file, but it basically makes it basically breaks your save file. I think they said that they found a resolution for that, so they're eventually going to patch that in later. I'm not 100% sure, but it's taken them some time for sure. So if you haven't started the game yet, just go ahead and update it all the way. Just make sure. I definitely had some crashes early on too, but I haven't had that many since. So we're going to come down here, do our kicks. Oh, and then, you know, true Castlevania fashion here. Breakable walls with stuff in it. Got a coat. So. Oops. Alright. So we got ourselves a boss fight here. I can get down there. Okay. Big old red hand. There's a couple areas in this game that do this whole like rotating camera thing, but most areas in the game are pretty, you know, flat 2D kind of looks. So I could sit here and hit this boss for, what is that, like 80 damage or 38 damage over and over again, or I could, whoops, or I could be bad and not get on top of it, or I can get on top of the boss and just do this over and over again. You know, it's not perfect, but works pretty well. Like, I'm doing immensely more damage than I would be doing on the ground right now. And I kind of, pretty much any boss that will let you do this, I just go ahead and do it. I will say some of the ladder bosses, specifically in the late game, I don't think they made any measures to prevent this per se, but some of the aspects of them cause them to be a bit harder to do this on. Basically due to the like the hitbox size. Like there's one boss in particular that has like a very small hitbox on his head, and he has like a particular attack pattern that kind of covers the top of the screen in like flames. And, you know, like this isn't 100% perfect. You can see I'm almost dead here, so I definitely am taking my damage. Go ahead and just kill him. Oh. I don't think I've ever been grabbed by him before. That's interesting. Or maybe that is required. Maybe I just never noticed that you get grabbed by him. But, yeah. So you can kind of burn through a lot of bosses that way if you're using the Bunny Girl. I feel like the Bunny Girl is 100% like the way to play this game. And I said that it's kind of harmful to the game. I think it is in terms of like the variety of the game. If you want like a lot of variety and like, but at the same time, it's that weird balance of like, yes, you could play the game the most effective way, the bunny kick way, in my opinion, at least. Or you could just play the game that you think is funner. And so, like, if that bothers you, I think you can very easily just play, you know, your normal weirdo Castlevania. Not weirdo. This is normal one. Why did I say normal and weirdo? But you can play pretty much your normal Castlevania this way. But at the same time, this rocks just floating there, huh? But, you know, you could also do it this way. So, it kind of is what it is. Overall, though, you know, I think this game's fine. This is pretty much everything they promised. It does feel like an improvement on those previous games. It feels like it's only an addition to what they've done before. Really, the things that are left over are the technical aspects of the game. And that stuff they've been cleaning up. It's been pretty stable lately. There's a couple of bugs here. Maybe the most offensive one is that like sometimes you'll jump in water and you just can't do anything in the water. You just get stuck in the water. But you can basically suspend the game and get out of it that way. But otherwise, I think that's pretty much all I wanted to say. I will say that I think Curse of the Moon probably has done more, like, in terms of adding to the franchise. Like this, again, like I said, this pretty much feels like it picked up right where it left off. So if you liked Order of Ecclesia and liked those Castlevania games on DS, this feels like an improvement on those. It feels like you could just jump right into this and you'll enjoy it. I had a good time with this, but no part of it feels like, you know, somebody like Igarashi revisiting this game and reworking it for like a modern, you know, like with its own unique twist. Like there's a lot of Metroidvania games out there, and I haven't played a lot of them, so maybe this game in particular still has a distinct style that people want. I definitely think that the variety here is pretty great in terms of the soul variety and things like that, and the weapon variety. I'm not sure if other games meet that level of standard when it comes to this style of game. But I hope in the next game they add in some more stuff that isn't just building on. Like this directional soul stuff is cool, but it's never really used in any way that feels necessary. Where like Curse of the Moon, which is like the 8-bit Bloodstained game that they put out before this, I think really reinvents what classic Castlevania is in a variety of ways. It also builds on Castlevania 3, and it also is faithful to like the original Castlevania as well. And it does so many things in one package, where this feels like it's more or less just delivering on what people ask for. And for a Kickstarter, especially one that happened around the time that the Mighty Number 9 stuff happened, that's probably all people could really ask for at this point. I'll be curious to see if they make another one. But yeah, it's all good fun. It's enjoyable. And I think it's like $30, $40, so it's definitely reasonable. It took me like 13 hours to get through pretty much the entire game in terms of like content. There are like hard mode things you can do, but I'm mostly good. I'll just do normal playthrough and maybe check out the DLC whenever that comes around. But yeah, that's it. Thanks for coming. OneControllerPort.com is the website. Podcast. I have a Castlevania 64 video that went up recently. So if you're a Castlevania fan and want to know about Castlevania 64 and what it does well, particularly because there's a lot of things you can find online about, or at least I feel like the general consensus still seems to be that Castlevania 64 is a bad game. Although I have found recently that there are actually quite a few people who seem to be changing their opinion on the game. So maybe I'm late to the party, but here we are. Castlevania 64 video is up. Hopefully I need to watch those other videos and see if they come to the same conclusions as I do, or if they have some other opinions on it. So yeah, and then just podcasts on the website as well, streams. I'm playing through Mega Man X2 right now, all that good stuff. So yeah, thanks for coming. Have a great week. Bye.